Welcome to Naptime Sports Talk Podcast. We are two dads talking sports during nap times. Thank you for tuning in to the latest episode. Welcome back to Naptime Sports Talk Podcast. In episode 4, we will go over key NFL offseason dates and then do our own mock draft for round 1 of the NFL draft. Enjoy the show.
Thanks everyone for tuning in to episode 4. We got a good one. Riley and I are both really big when it comes to the NFL draft, and we're gonna lay out our first mock draft. So this will be exciting to look back in a month or two and see how much it changes. But we got some big dates coming up here for the NFL offseason. And Riley, what do we got?
Yeah, so just upcoming here, we on February 20th, we'll start to see some moves happen around the NFL. So that's the date that teams can start to designate franchise tags on players who are going to be free agents, and then also apply transition tags on, I think, like undrafted free agents and things like that. So, yeah, just some key guys, like, just put in perspective, the Vikings can't put a franchise tag on Danielle Hunter because he has that written in his contract. So that's, some people might say, well, why can't we put a franchise tag on Hunter? But that's the reason why, is because in his contract, they decided not to do the franchise tag this offseason.
Sure. Makes sense. Hopefully they can get a deal done long term, because you don't want to lose a guy like that.
Yeah, and it would not be very cool if he ends up going to the Chicago Bears. I know they have interest right now. They have a lot of cap space to spend, so we just got to keep him back here in Minnesota would be the best thing. And then, so the next date after that is one of my favorite times besides the draft, and that is the NFL Scouting Combine in Indianapolis. And that will happen from February 27th through March 4th. And Zach, I don't know if you saw this today, but the Michigan Wolverines have a new record for the most players to ever be invited to the NFL Scouting Combine, and that is at 18.
18 are. Wow, actually
18 guys.
Actually, I haven't seen that, and I haven't seen who's going to be in the combine this year. I haven't seen any names yet. I'm assuming a guy like JJ McCarthy would be there. Hopefully he's throwing, hopefully he's running. But 18 guys, I mean, man, I know they're national championships, but that's a lot.
Yeah, we'll see if 18 guys get drafted in the NFL here in April, but I know they came out with the list today of the invites, and the top quarterbacks will all be there. Caleb Williams, Drake May, Jaden Daniels, and then we also have, like JJ McCarthy, Michael Penix, Bo Nix. So those top QBs will be there, and there's some really overall great other prospects that'll be attending there. So I'm really excited to see what these guys can do and just see the athleticism out of all these guys.
Same here. I can't wait. I hope all those guys throw, and I really hope all those guys run. I'm really curious to see what, like, a Drake May runs. Obviously, Jaden Daniels, I would think that he'd be like a 4-3 guy. So I just hope everyone participates, but I love this quarterback class.
Yeah, for sure. I want to see JJ McCarthy run too, to see what he can put up.
Yep, for sure. Should be pretty quick. So, I think he's going to surprise people. I wouldn't be surprised if he's like a 4-5 guy.
Yeah. Well, he can move pretty well. You see that in his tape, that's for sure. So then another date after that is March 11th and the 13th, and that's when the free agent negotiating window opens. So that's not exactly when free agency begins, but that is when teams can go now and talk to players before that window begins and start getting deals in place. So when the new league year happens on March 13th at 3 p.m. Central Time, then those guys can start signing those contracts.
Yeah, I can't wait for that. That's honestly one of my favorite things about the entire offseason. I mean, those couple days there where tampering starts, I mean, it's the news that comes and the guys that agree to terms, and then sometimes guys will back out of their contracts that they agreed upon, and before they actually can sign it. So it's mayhem. It really is.
Yeah, I'm very excited for free agency this year. Obviously, a lot of different guys around the NFL, big name guys, gonna be free agents. and then also just to see what the Vikes do at the quarterback position with Kirk Cousins. If they let him walk into free agency or if they extend him before that time. So a lot
Absolutely.
of big things coming, and I think we'll have a better idea of where teams may look towards the draft after free agency starts, and we'll do another mock draft as well once that period happens.
Yeah, for sure. I think when it's all said and done, we'll probably have 3 or maybe even 4 mock drafts. So it's going to be fun to look back at this podcast and kind of compare to what our final mock will be. So starting things off here, I mean, obviously the Bears have the number 1 pick in the draft, thanks to the Carolina Panthers. And I'm going to let you take this one away here. What are the Bears going to do? And let's be clear. I just want to clear this up real fast. This is what we would do. Okay, this isn't what we think is going to happen. This is what Riley and I would do. Like, so Riley's got the number 1 pick here. Riley, what would you do with that number 1 overall pick?
Yeah, so it's gonna be a fun one this year, the draft. April 25th through April 27th, and it's gonna be in Detroit, which will be really cool to see.
Yep.
But so sitting at the first overall pick with the Chicago Bears, there's a lot of talk right now. Are they going to trade out of that pick to receive a haul? Probably an historic haul too, since Caleb Williams is sitting there with the number 1 as the number 1 quarterback coming out of this class. Then there's talk about, well, do they stay with Justin Fields, run it back with him, add maybe a guy like Marvin Harrison Jr. at the wide receiver position. But at the end of the day, I think, it'll be smart for the Bears to just sit there and take Caleb Williams and reset that quarterback clock. They have all that cap space. They can really build a solid roster around him. And if they hit on Williams, man, he looks special in college. He's got a great arm, just makes crazy throws, and he's got incredible accuracy too. So I think if the Bears took him, that would be the best thing. That's what I would do. And as a Vikings fan, I'd be pretty nervous going forward with seeing what the Bears can put together here this offseason.
Yeah, for sure. I think obviously I'm one of the bigger Justin Fields fans out there. I truly believe in him. I think he's an MVP caliber quarterback, but I would do the same thing. I'm taking Caleb Williams at 1, not even thinking about it. You can go ahead and trade Justin for maybe a second and a third or something along those lines. And in my opinion, a lot of people agree with this. Caleb Williams, I mean, that's the closest thing we've seen to Patrick Mahomes in the league. He plays a lot like him.
Yeah.
They're kind of built the same. Caleb's actually a little faster. Arm strength is almost identical. The weird throwing angles that both of these guys have, especially outside of the pocket. I mean, they're almost clones. So,
for sure.
The Bears obviously passed on Patrick Mahomes a couple years back, and they took Mitchell Trubisky.
Yeah,
so
that's right.
Now they can correct this wrong and go ahead, get your franchise guy. I think at the end of the day, Caleb Williams will be the quarterback in Chicago.
Yeah, I think, I think so too. And like I said, man, if they hit on him, they're going to have their franchise guy for years and years to come. So, well, with the second overall pick, you have the Washington Commanders on the clock, Zach. And since you're doing the evens in this mock and I'm going to be doing the odds, you're up.
Yep. So with Washington, obviously you got a new head coach, you got a new offense coordinator in Cliff Kingsbury. What I would do with the number 2 pick in the draft is I would go and take Jaden Daniels, quarterback, LSU. I would take him. I would take him over Drake May. I think he's just more dynamic. When it comes to just the fluidity of passing, I think they're pretty similar. They're pretty close. So, and obviously Jaden Daniels has that scrambling ability. So having a guy like that, at quarterback is just a deadly weapon. Reminds me a lot of Lamar Jackson. And going back to Cliff Kingsbury, I mean, he worked with guys like Johnny Manziel, Caleb Williams, Patrick Mahomes. He worked with Kyler Murray in Arizona. So I think Jaden McDaniels kind of fits that mold.
Yeah, that would be a really good pick. And I just think you can't go wrong with either of those guys at number 2.
Yep.
This quarterback class, I believe, is going to be one of the more historic classes that we've seen in quite a while. Obviously, go back to that Mahomes draft. Who was also in that draft? I can't remember off the top of my head.
That was
Yep.
Trubisky. Oh God, who else was in that draft?
Mahomes was, let's see.
Yeah, you had to look that one up. That was a while
Okay.
ago. I know Mahomes ended up going like, but there was another quarterback that went before that
Yeah.
too.
And he wasn't even, I didn't even know he was going to be a first round pick going into that night.
Yeah, I never thought, anything of it. I just thought Mahomes was, a decent quarterback prospect. I didn't think he had the potential to be the best of all
Yeah.
time.
So that was back in, let's see, that was back in 20, was that 18, 17? Let's see,
That's probably 2018. Yeah.
2018. Yeah, we'll just look that up. We'll kind of come back to that. But yeah, so the next pick on the clock here is New England Patriots. There's been a lot of talk here about, do they stay with that pick or are they going to be looking to move back? If I was them, I'm looking at my quarterback, do I go out there and find someone in free agency and, maybe like a Kirk Cousins or someone else. But man, if I'm sitting there with New England and I need to restart this franchise from scratch, it would be hard for me to pass up on Drake May. So that would be my pick. Since we can't trade this pick,
Yep.
I would pick Drake May out of North Carolina.
Yeah, I really like that pick. And if you just look at Drake May, I mean, he just looks like a
For
Patriot
sure.
quarterback. He really
And
does.
he
I love
looks
that
like
fit.
Justin Herbert. Like,
Yeah, he does, and he plays a
yeah.
lot like Justin
You
Herbert
look
too.
at him.
Looks like him in the
Yeah,
face.
exactly. He looks exactly like him. 6'4", 230. Definitely a NFL prototype quarterback. So, and he's young too. He's only, I think he'll be 20, 21, maybe 22 leading into next year. So,
Sure. Yep.
he's still a
Yep.
young guy, and I think the Patriots would be very happy with that pick with him sitting there at number 3.
Yep. I totally agree with that.
So,
Moving on to pick number 4, the Arizona Cardinals are on the clock. These guys are probably the happiest, team in the entire league. Marvin Harrison Jr. falls right in their lap. In my opinion, he's the best player in this entire draft class. Probably the best wide receiver prospect since Julio Jones. Actually, kind of reminds me a lot of Julio Jones. Similar size. Julio was a little bit. He weighed a little bit more, but Julio ran a 4.39. He was a 4.3 guy, and I think Marvin is going to be right around there. He might be even faster than a 4.39. So Cardinals, obviously they've had guys like Anquan Boldin, Larry Fitzgerald, and then it's kind of been a while since they've had a legit number 1 receiver. Well, you solve that problem, you run to the podium, you turn that card in, and Marvin Harrison Jr. is now Arizona Cardinal.
man, that would be a slam dunk pick for them because you just watch him. He's the best wide receiver I've seen coming out of college for, I don't know, maybe ever. So
Yeah, he's
he's
yep,
he's
he's rare.
special, generational type wide receiver. I think he comes in and he's a top 10 wide receiver his rookie year. Um, and that would be a very nice pairing for Kyler Murray for the Arizona Cardinals.
Absolutely.
So yeah, sitting at pick number 5, we have the Los Angeles Chargers, and you know Jim Harbaugh, excuse me. He's really known for building those trenches, having a solid line, solid defensive lines. But just sitting here, man, they have Keenan Allen, they have Mike Williams. I think he'll be back next year, right?
Yeah, Mike Williams will be
Then
back.
they
Yep.
took
Keenan Allen will probably be off the team though.
Willie. Okay. So yeah, there you
Yeah,
go.
yep.
Like, you have guys sitting here, wide receiver Malik Neighbors. They could maybe go tight end Brock Bowers from Georgia. They could maybe go Rome Odunze from Washington, wide receiver. Or they could sit there and really shore up their offensive line and go tackle, maybe Joe Alter, Fashanu out of Penn State. So, but I'm sitting there, man, I want to maximize this offense. And if Keenan Allen's leaving, that's kind of a no-brainer for me right now. That I would take Malik Neighbors out of LSU. And Malik Neighbors, if Marv Harrison Jr. is not in this class, Malik Neighbors would be the number one wide receiver in my opinion.
Yep, I totally agree with you. I think honestly the gap between Marvin Harrison Jr. and obviously we just break them up, but Malik Neighbors, I mean, he's right there. He's as a prospect, he's just as good as a Marvin Harrison Jr. Honestly, reminds me a lot of Antonio Brown, just the way he moves, his explosiveness. Malik Neighbors with Justin Herbert. I mean, man, what an absolute home
Yeah,
run.
that would be an outstanding pick, and I know that Raiders fans would probably be a little nervous about that one.
Yeah, absolutely. You'd have to try to get another corner or two in free agency because trying to stop him with Mike Williams and whoever else they bring in, obviously, Jim Harbaugh's known for being one of the better quarterback coaches in the world.
Yeah, for
So
sure.
Justin Herbert's game is going to go to an entirely different level.
Yeah, and he
So
was also
yeah,
on
a lot to worry about.
he's also on Bruce Feldman's freak list before the college season started. So,
Sure,
he
sure.
always has that list that's really cool to check out, but he was on that list. So he definitely fit that as a kind of athletic freak with incredible ball skills, that's for sure. So,
Yeah, for sure. Moving forward, we got the New York Giants on the clock at 6. I think they just go best player available. Uh, in my opinion, I think that's Brock Bowers, tight end from Georgia. 6'4", 240 pounds. He's just as good as a pass catcher as he is a blocker. Um, to be honest with you, within a couple years, I would expect him to be a top 5 tight end in the NFL.
yeah, man, just watch him at Georgia. He's special. He's probably one of the best tight ends I've seen in a long time.
Yep,
He's an
yep,
all around tight end. He can block. He can go in line block. You can put him out in the slot at tight end or out in the X position too, and he can even be out there and make plays. So he's a special talent, and I think that would be a great pick for the New York Giants. Do you think that they would think about maybe a quarterback at number 6, or do you think they're going to run it back another year of Daniel Jones and then maybe look for a guy if Daniel Jones doesn't produce in the next draft here in 2025?
yeah. So the only reason why I didn't go quarterback here is because they got Daniel Jones under that bigger contract for one more season. They can get out of it after this next season. So I would think that they would try to run it back one more year with Daniel Jones. He was hurt a little bit last year, so give him one more chance. I mean, obviously the Giants are probably in a rebuild now because it sounds like they're going to let Saquon Barkley go. So, and we talked about it in the past. I like that 2025 quarterback
Yeah, for
class.
sure.
So you go out here, you get a guy like Brock Bowers, and then depending, where you're picking next year, I mean, you can maybe get a guy like Shador Sanders in next year's
Yeah,
draft.
definitely. Definitely. That quarterback class next year is very exciting
He's
as
looking
well,
nice.
too. So
Yep.
we'll sit here at the number 7th pick here in the first round is the Tennessee Titans. They move on from Mike Vrabel. And, one thing that, I think they need is just continuing to add to that offensive line. Right now at this pick, they'd have their choice of whoever they think is the best offense tackle. Taylor Lewan, left. They never were able to really replace him. So I would probably sit here and take, if I was the Tennessee Titans, I would be picking Joe Alt out of Notre Dame, offense tackle. He's a big dude. I think he's like 6'8", probably 315. Notre Dame boy. You know how I like my Notre Dame boys. And then, he's also
Yep.
from Minnesota too. So just a very fun prospect. And I think he would fit nicely down on the left tackle position for the Tennessee Titans.
Yep, and I totally agree with you. I think the Tennessee Titans have to start building it from the inside out. A guy like Joe Alt, I do think he's the best tackle in this draft. I think he's only allowed one sack in his entire college career. He's that kind of guy. So you plug him in at left tackle, and hopefully he's your left tackle for the next decade plus.
Yeah, I agree.
So moving on to pick 8, the Atlanta Falcons. They just their new head coach is Raheem Morris, so I think they're going to go on the defensive side of the ball here. You could look at quarterback here at 8 with maybe a guy like J.J. McCarthy, but I do think that they're either going to go out and get a guy like Kirk Cousins, like we talked about
Yeah.
before, or could make a trade for a guy like Justin
Yeah,
Fields.
for sure.
Justin Fields is from Atlanta. I think that would be a really nice fit there for quarterback. So with the eighth pick, I'm going to say that the Falcons take Dallas Turner, defensive end out of
Okay.
Alabama. Uh, the Falcons really struggled with pass rush the last couple years. Calais Campbell being their best pass rusher. I think he's 37, 38 years old.
Mhm.
And after him, I don't think they had anyone that had more than 7 sacks last year.
Yeah.
So you get a guy like Dallas Turner, super explosive off the first step. Had 10 sacks last year, I'm pretty sure. Um, just probably, in my opinion, he's the best pass rusher in the draft. He falls to 8. Atlanta runs to the board, turns that card in. You got a new pass rusher in Atlanta.
Yeah, one thing you're watching with Turner is just a bit his athleticism just jumps off the tape. Going back
For
to
sure.
the Michigan Alabama game, the way he closed in on a sack, JJ scrambled off to the left, and just the way he was able to just hit that edge, man,
Turn
and
on the
just turn it, and he
burners.
was
Yep.
there in a second. So I think that's an exciting pick. If the Vikings, if I was a Vikings fan, I'd be pretty bummed out at that position because he's one guy. If they would go defense, I would love to have on the edge.
Absolutely, for
So,
sure.
well, the Chicago Bears are back up on the ninth pick. So this is their actual pick from this season. Obviously, the first overall pick was from Carolina, from the trade from last year. But, they just got their quarterback. And this class, they have, they have a 3 guys at that wide receiver position that all arguably, all could be number 1 guys in other drafts. So I think they'd add a big body wide receiver, Rome Odunze out of Washington. That's what I would do
Nice.
this pick. Pair him up with DJ Moore, Cole Kmet, Darnell Mooney. I think he'll be back next year. And man, that's going to be a really, really tough matchup going forward. Having to guard a guy like Odunze and then another guy like Moore, and then Cole Kmet too.
Oh yeah, for sure. And one thing about Caleb Williams is he loves to push the ball down the field. So you get a guy like Rome where last year, I mean, his connection with Penix on those deep balls, it just were
Mm-hmm.
unstoppable. I mean, there's nothing you could do about it. He led college football in receiving yards last year. I think he had almost 1,700 receiving yards. So a guy like that can stretch the field, and you can have a guy like DJ Moore kind of work underneath a little bit more. I mean, talk about some nice weapons for Caleb
Yeah, for
Williams.
sure. They'd definitely be setting him up nicely there going forward. That's for sure.
Yeah, yeah, no doubt about it. Moving to pick 10 here, the New York Jets are on the clock. Um, I think they would be very excited about this pick. I really don't think that there's a big difference between the top 2 tackles in this draft. So with the 10th pick, the Jets select Illuminaya Fasciano, if I said that correct. That's a tough one to say. That's a
Man,
mouthful.
that is a mouthful, dude. And I think you
But
did really good on that one because I'm not sure how to pronounce his first name, but Fashanu, I believe
yeah,
that's how you say his last name. So,
I was honestly kind of hoping that you were going to take him, so I didn't have to say his name. But
I had,
I'll bite the bullet on that
I
one.
didn't take alt because I just needed to hear you say that last name there on that one. So,
Oh man, but the Jets would definitely take this guy if he's still on the board, I believe. Obviously, the main thing is you got to protect Aaron Rodgers. Rodgers will be back next season. A lot of people compare Fasciano to Trent Williams just in size. I mean, he's such a big dude,
mm-hmm.
6'7", 330 pounds. Definitely an elite pass blocker, but kind of struggles a little bit against the run. But I mean, either way, that's what you need. You need a left tackle that can, uh, pass block for Aaron Rodgers. So yeah, with the 10th pick, I think that's a great pick for the
Yeah, I
Jets.
agree too. And with Fashanu, he could have left last year, and his stock was high last year too, top 10 as well. And he might even
Yep, for
been
sure.
drafted a little higher than 10 here and back in the 2023 draft. But he's arguably
Yep,
a top 10, top 15 guy, that's for sure. So I know he kind of had some struggles this year that he showed on tape, but I think he
yep,
can clean that up and he'll be a solid pick. And definitely a need there for the New York Jets.
yep. No doubt about it.
So we made it to this point. The Minnesota Vikings are on the clock, and we're sitting here at pick number 11. You know, there's just so much that could happen after we do this draft. And, the question mark at quarterback, do we extend Kirk? Because if we extend Kirk, well, I don't think we're going to use this pick on a quarterback. We're going to use this pick on maybe a defensive guy. That's a big need. Maybe if another wide receiver fell there, I could see Kwesi pulling the trigger on that, just trying to, um, add more talent and just have a 3-head wide receiver monster. Um,
Yep.
but I think the Vikings, they say kind of broke over this weekend. The Vikings have an idea of the amount of money that they want Kirk to sign for, and it's either he signs for that or he's pretty much gone. So, but just saying, if Kirk left, it's before for me, it's been hard to pick a quarterback at this number 11 spot, and I feel like if you have your guy, you just got to go for it because you just never know what's going to happen. And you look at the next 3 picks coming up here. You have the Broncos, the Raiders, and the Saints. So one of those teams could snab your guy too. And so if they're sitting there at this pick, and there's no quarterbacks taken other than a top 3 that we already had. We've heard this over the weekend as well. Heard it from his old coach, Jim Harbaugh. I think J.J. McCarthy would be the guy that I would take at 11 over Penix and Nix. And that is because he's still young. He was in a run-heavy offense in that Harbaugh Michigan offense. But when I saw him make some plays, he does have that ability. He's got a pretty elite arm. He definitely needs to develop more. I do like his ability to throw on the run. I think that is one of his better strengths. And then just his ability to move around and avoid pressure in the pocket too. I'd think of a guy like Michael Penix maybe at this position, but Michael Penix is not, he can move in the pocket, but J.J. McCarthy definitely has that, has a better ability to move around in the pocket. Saying this pick, though, I think you need to match this up with a bridge quarterback because J.J. McCarthy is not going to go in there right away and start in year 1. So draft him in year 1 and just hopefully hit on the quarterback and he can develop and you have your guy moving forward.
Yeah, and I totally agree. I mean, I like that pick. I think, like you said, they would have to get a bridge quarterback in there. You'd have to go out and get a guy like Minshew, Winston, Tannehill, something along those lines that could come in and start for a season or at least half the season, and let JJ just sit a little bit and learn and kind of pick a veteran's brain a little bit. But he's very raw. But his upside, I mean, I think his upside is right there, right behind a guy like Caleb Williams. I mean, obviously JJ was a 5-star recruit coming out of high school. He has all the traits that you want in a franchise quarterback, but I just think it's going to take a little more time for it to just be where you want it to be, to put him on the field and actually start him at the next level. So I like the pick. Definitely would have to get a veteran guy, but overall, I mean, you got it. JJ to JJ for the next decade plus. Doesn't sound too bad.
Yeah, that'd be pretty fun. I know Paul Allen would have a lot of fun with that one on his radio broadcast.
Yeah, for sure. And then maybe in free agency they can go out and sign a guy like Josh Jacobs. Yeah. JJ, and JJ.
Yeah. Right? Oh my gosh. That'd be crazy. The 3 JJs.
For sure. But yeah, moving on to pick 12 here. The Denver Broncos, they're probably pretty upset that you just took the quarterback I think that they're really looking hard at.
Yeah. And I don't feel bad for him, honestly, with Sean Payton. Can't stand that guy.
No, dude, exactly. So they're probably upset with that pick. But what I would do in this situation is I'm beefing up that defensive line. I love this player. He reminds me a lot of Jordan Davis from last year. But Tavondre Sweat, defensive tackle from Texas, maybe a little higher than some people have him, but if you watch him play, he just moves bodies around. He's awesome he's a good pass rusher, but man, stuffing the run. If you put him in one-on-ones, I mean, he's gonna dominate. It doesn't matter who it is. So he won the Outland Trophy winner for the best interior lineman in college last year. He was the Big 12 Defensive Player of the Year. I mean, this guy's just an absolute freak. I think he's 380 or might even be heavier than that. He's a big, big dude. You plug him in, and there's your run stuffing defensive tackle for a long time.
Yeah, man, I'm a little bummed out because he's a guy that I just wish would fall to the second round to the Vikings because quarterback, D line, that would be my
Yep.
dream draft right there. And
Yep.
but man, I just don't think it's gonna happen because just things you said, and also at the Senior Bowl, a lot of guys had trouble going against him, and you put a guy in the middle like that that can create pressure up the middle and just eat up holes right in the run game. I think that is something that teams are going to fall in love with. And yeah, I think you're right. I think he could go a lot higher than he's supposed to be right now. So
Yeah, for sure. I think that senior bowl really helped him. I mean, if you watch, the practice highlights and stuff, dude, he was throwing bodies around. So
yeah,
seems
he's
like a really
definitely
nice kid too.
he was definitely a man amongst I don't want to say
Boys for
boys,
sure.
but man, because they're not all boys, but he just is, like you said, he
He's
is a
he's
big dude. Just put it
yeah,
that way.
yeah,
So
he definitely is. Moving on to 13, so I'm going to take over this pick because the Raiders are now on the clock. So looking at the quarterback position, I don't know if I could really take a quarterback here at 13. I know previously I talked about Penix here, um, but I really have to see what Penix is going to do at the combine here. I just want to see what he looks like. Um, but 13 just might be just a little too rich for me. I would probably still trade up in the later first round and get him just so you can have that 5th-year option on him. But right here, if I'm the Raiders, obviously also pretty upset that Sweat just went right in front of you. But I would take Jerzan Newton, defensive tackle from Illinois. Kind of
that'd be a
talked about
solid
it
pick.
before. Yeah, kind of talked about it before. They just need to beef up that defensive line. Are they going to go out and offer a fat contract to a guy like Chris Jones? I don't know. I feel like he's going to get paid big time. But you could go out and get a guy like Newton. He's 6'2", 200 or 6'2", 300 pounds. So he's not the biggest defensive tackle, but just a disruptive force. Great power off the line, and he's probably the best pass rushing defensive tackle in this draft. So getting a guy like that, plug him in next to Crosby and Kuntz, and let him just eat in that middle, let him eat in that interior of that defense. I would absolutely love that pick. So yeah, number 13, Raiders, Jerzon Newton from
Yeah.
Illinois.
Yeah, I would really like that pick for you guys. He is my favorite interior defensive lineman in this draft. Just his pass rush ability, and he can play in a 3-4. You can put him in the middle. You can put him on the edge positions, and just let him go to work, man. And he would be
Yep.
a nice he would be a very nice addition to that Las Vegas Raiders D line.
Yeah, I'm a huge, huge fan of his.
All right, well, the next pick is number 14. I'm not very excited to make this pick because it's the Saints, but I'll do it anyways. So, sitting here with the Saints, we got, man, they are in some cap hell this offseason.
They sure are. Yep.
They are like negative $80 million under or over the cap. Sitting here though, they also have a need for quarterback, and I want to say that Penix would go before Nix, but Nix just reminds me a little bit of that build of their previous quarterback in Drew Brees. That's a comparison I've heard before. So I'll take Bo Nix here out of Oregon
All right.
quarterback at 14. He had a really tough Senior Bowl. Had a heck of a season though, up for the Heisman. And I think if we judge him based on the Senior Bowl, it's kind of unfair, because it's only a 3-day practice. Anyone could be off for 3 days. But his tape, he's got something there. Hopefully going to the Saints, he'd be a bust, so I'd be happy with that. But
Yep, for sure.
I definitely think that he, I think he would be a solid pick for the Saints there, and they could potentially get their guy going forward.
Yeah, I mean, I would really like that pick. Like kind of like what you said. I don't really care for Bo Nix too much, and I don't care for the Saints. So, just let him sit in New Orleans for next decade or whatever you want to call it. But yeah, I wouldn't be happy like if say the Raiders were to draft Bo Nix. I just think watching him play, he throws too many balls. He doesn't throw many balls like too far past the line of scrimmage. I think his career average is like 7 yards per attempt, which comparing to the other quarterbacks in this draft, I mean, is really, really low.
Yeah.
So, Oregon really runs that spread offense. It's a great offense for college. I don't know how well it's going to translate to the next level, but yeah, Bo Nix to the Saints, man. That would be awesome for me.
Yeah, so moving on to the 15th pick, I'm going to be picking this one again. That's the Indianapolis Colts. They could use a wide receiver. They could use some O-line help, some interior of the defensive line. If Newton was still here, I'd probably take him at this pick. But they got their quarterback going forward. Michael Pittman may be gone. He might leave in free agency. We'll see what happens with that. But I think just continuing to build those trenches is just the blueprint of starting to build a solid team. You see with a lot of these teams, you saw the San Francisco 49ers, their D-line, their O-line. You see with the Chiefs, their D-line, their O-line. So the Eagles too, when they won the Super Bowl back when they were back in Minneapolis that year, they had a
Yep.
solid, just a stud defense line too. But so yeah, just building on the lines, I think would be a very smart pick for them. And, they could sit here with arguably one of the best edge rushers in this draft, and that is Jared Verse out of Florida State. I would take
Nice.
him, put him right on the edge. Maybe he can come inside. He's got a lot of power. Maybe he can play a 3 technique or go inside and do a little pass rush up the middle like the Vikes used to do with Hunter and Everson Griffin. I think that would be a really solid pick for them.
Yeah, I really like that pick. Uh, Having a guy like Verse fall to 15, I mean, that's a great value pick there for sure. But moving forward here, number 16, we got the Seattle Seahawks. So I'm gonna go back to back to back defensive tackles. I mean, I just really like this defensive tackle class.
Mm-hmm.
Um, with the 16th pick, I'm gonna say Byron Murphy, defensive tackle out of Texas. Obviously, he played next to Sweat. Uh, by far the best defensive tackle tandem in college football. Um, Murphy had 9 sacks last year. A guy like Harrison Reed for the Seattle Seahawks, their starting defensive tackles getting older. I think he's 32 now. So it would be nice to pair Reed with Murphy and just let it run.
Yeah, I think you can't go wrong with that pick. And I know the Vikings have a lot of interest in him from what I've heard. Um, just on different, through different media people, and that yeah, he's going to be I think he's going to be a really great defense lineman in the NFL. So the next pick at number 17, and that is Jacksonville Jaguars. And, um, sitting here, man, oh my gosh, his name is crazy to say too, but Latu out of UCLA edge rusher.
Oh yes,
Is
yes.
sitting here too. I think Josh Allen is up for free agency this year.
Yep.
He had a very solid season. He could leave. But I think if I was the Jacksonville Jaguars, I would be taking Latu out of UCLA, and that is for edge rusher.
Yeah, I that's a great pick too. Obviously, we talked about him in previous podcast about his injury concern, but if he clears your medical, I mean, to have a guy like him fall to 17 is nuts because he
Yeah, for
might.
sure.
I mean, when it comes to just straight up pass rushing moves, I mean, he might have the biggest toolbox out of them all. He had 23 and a half sacks the last 2 seasons, 6'5", 265 pounds, just a prototypical pass rushing defensive end. So great pick for the Jacksonville Jaguars there.
Yeah, I know he's definitely a technician with his hands too. So
Yep, no doubt about it. Moving on to 18 here, we got the Cincinnati Bengals. And it seems like every single draft, we always talk about the offensive line, but I'm going to go there again. J.C. Latham, offensive tackle from Alabama, 6'6", 360 pounds. If you haven't seen this guy play yet, I highly recommend plugging in his YouTube highlights. One of the most violent left tackles that you will see. He's, like I said, 360 pounds, so he's a big boy, but is he violent with his hands? So getting a guy like that, I mean, you have to keep Joe Burrow healthy. You have to. I know they've gone out and signed some guys and have done pretty much everything they can to beef up that offensive line, but just keep adding those guys. So J.C. Latham, offensive tackle from Alabama, going to Cincinnati, I think would be really smart on their behalf.
Yeah, that would be a very nice pick for the Bengals. And like you said, they need to keep adding to that line to protect Burrow. So, well,
For
next
sure.
next on the clock is L.A. Rams, and they could go defense line here. They could need some linebacker help. I just think all around they need some help on the defensive side of the ball. And we talk about this cornerback. He's been kind of rising up draft boards here. Had a really impressive Senior Bowl, and that is Quinion Mitchell, cornerback out of Toledo. Um, he's a guy that has incredible ball skills as a D-back. I believe he had 3 picks in one game this year, and I think he potentially brought all 3 of those back to the house.
Yep. Yeah, he's crazy.
So,
He's
he is
yeah,
6 foot 195, but I think he'd be a nice fit for the Rams. They let go, or they traded Ramsey last offseason to the Miami Dolphins, so they just need to go back to that well and draft a corner here in the first round.
yeah, I like that pick a lot. He was the least targeted corner in this entire draft class. So he's a guy talked about Namdi Asama a little bit. I mean, he might have that kind of potential to literally just shut down, an entire side of or half the field. So I really like that pick for those guys. Moving to Pittsburgh at pick 20, I'm going corner two here. They obviously drafted Joey Porter Jr. last year. He had a great season, Pro Bowl corner. But I'm going to go ahead and take Terrion Arnold here, corner from Alabama. A lot of people have him as the number one cornerback in this draft class. Um, in my opinion, this is probably one of the weaker quarterback draft classes in a while. So if you were to go out and if you're looking for a corner and you want to take one early, because I think in later rounds, I think the drop off is pretty steep. But going back to Arnold, he played a little safety for Alabama before moving back to corner. So in reality, if you really wanted to, you could kind of move him all over that defense. But having a guy like him next to Joey Porter Jr. would be really nice.
Yeah, that would be a really nice pick for them. And just having those 2 guys, I think Joey Porter was up for Defensive Rookie of the Year this year too,
Yep,
so he
right.
had a really solid year. That would be some 2 nice players on the outside for the Pittsburgh Steelers going forward. Yeah, so moving on now to the 21st pick, you have the Miami Dolphins on the clock. And I just think they can still use some help on their offensive line, and just a violent offensive tackle, can just lock guys up with his hands, and that's Talise Fuaga out of Oregon State. Definitely a power offensive tackle, and I think he'd be a very solid pick and a nice add to that Miami Dolphins offensive line.
Yeah, for sure. I like that pick a lot too. Anything to keep Tua up and healthy. Obviously, he's dealt with injury concerns too. So keeping a guy like that upright is huge. So moving on to the 22nd pick, the Philadelphia Eagles are on the clock, and I think they go corner here. Kool-Aid McKinstry, corner from Alabama. Kool-Aid is not his real name. I know a lot of people are probably wondering if that's his real name. It's not. His first name is Quincy. So if I had a name like Quincy, I would probably go by Kool-Aid too. But yeah, I just don't know how much longer a guy like Darius Slay is going to be around for them. You know, eventually, the Eagles got a really stacked roster. I could see, it's going to come to the point where they're going to have to start paying these guys. I could see Slay being a cap casualty. So you go out there coming into the season for college football. Kool-Aid was the number one corner coming into the season. Kind of got outplayed by his teammate Arnold, but overall still had a good season. He's definitely still worthy of a first round pick. And yeah, I think he'd be a great fit in Philly.
Yeah, I agree. That'd be a very really nice pick for them, and um, just going back to that SEC. Well, they
Absolutely.
went to Georgia, now they go to Alabama. So
Yep, they love that.
he definitely looks like an Eagle, that's for sure.
Yep.
So, well, moving on now to the 23rd pick. The Houston Texans are on the clock. They could, Tank Dell. I'm not sure if he's, how much time he's going to miss next year with that late injury in the year. You know, they could maybe use some more rushers on the D line, maybe use just a little more offensive line help too. And, one of my favorite rising prospects here in this draft process has been the center out of Oregon. And, he had just a strong, really strong Senior Bowl. His stock just rose completely up the boards. And that's Jackson Powers Johnson, and he's a center. So he would fit very nicely in Houston, and I think they would get their center moving forward for years to come.
Yeah, that is a really nice pick. I mean, CJ Stroud would like that pick a lot. So yeah, I'm definitely a fan of that one. Moving on to pick 24 here, the Dallas Cowboys. I think their number one need is receiver. They have to find a guy opposite of CD Lamb. They got to take some pressure off CD. And the guy that I really like a lot in this draft is Brian Thomas Jr., wide receiver out of LSU. Towards the end of the season, he really rose up the boards. 6'4", 205 pounds. Honestly, he's built just like Randy Moss. Probably the best pure deep ball threat in this draft. And he's probably going to run mid 4.3s. So he's a burner. He's got the size, and if you can stretch the field, and like I said before, just kind of have CD work underneath and get a bunch of receptions, I think a guy like Brian Thomas Jr. in Dallas would be massive for that team.
Yeah, he really had a terrific year, and he flies, man. He's got some speed for sure. I'll be excited to see what he can run at the combine.
Yeah, he's really fun to watch. Honestly, this is an unfair comparison, but he reminds me just the way he runs of Randy Moss.
Yeah, that's a pretty big comparison, but
Yeah.
he definitely is that kind of lanky build like Moss was. So,
Yep.
well, moving on now to the next pick, pick number 25 here. Again, I got to do another pick. I'm just not very excited about, but I guess I'll do it. And that is for the Green Bay Packers. The Green Bay Packers, obviously they hit on their quarterback. I'd like to see what he does next year, but man, he looked special this season, especially later on in the year. So, I kind of jump a little back and forth. Could they go cornerback to add to someone next to Jair Alexander on the outside? Could they go offensive tackle? I know that David Bakhtiari, he's been hurt for the last couple of years. I'm not sure what's going on with that situation. So, but if I'm the Green Bay Packers, I think they have a nice group of wide receivers. They could maybe add someone in the second round if they want to. But I think they just need to shore up their offensive line and offense tackle, and that's taking, I'll take Amarius Mims, offensive tackle out of Georgia.
Nice. I like that pick.
So, he's a big dude, very powerful, and I think he would, I think he would fit nicely with the Green Bay Packers, and he's 6'7", 340 pounds. So yeah, he is a mauler, that's for sure.
Yeah, definitely. He's a big dude. Hopefully, whoever the Packers take, they turn into a bust. But moving on to number 26, we got the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Had a really good season this year with Baker Mayfield at quarterback. I fully expect them to lock him up. So I'm gonna go to the defensive side of the ball for this pick. I'm gonna go Chop Robinson, defensive end from Penn State. As of right now, he's kind of a one-trick pony, but if he can add, more tools to his tool belt, I think he could easily be a double-digit sack guy, for years to come. So, and he might have the best first step in the entire draft. So he's kind of a one-trick pony, really explosive off the line of scrimmage. So more of a project, but at pick 26, I really like his potential.
Yeah, I know, and he's just an old school edge rusher too. He wears no gloves, no sleeves, and
Yeah,
he
he's
fit
awesome.
nicely down. That would fit perfect for him though down in that Tampa weather. So definitely probably don't need to
Yep.
be wearing sleeves in that heat.
No, definitely not.
So well, now moving on to pick number 27. You have the Arizona Cardinals here. They took Marvin Harrison Jr. and with the fourth overall pick, and now they're back on the clock. This pick belonged to Houston. Houston traded up last year to select Will Anderson Jr. with that third overall pick, and taking the wide receiver early. I think that Arizona could use some D-back help, and a guy that I like. He's one of my favorite cornerbacks in this class, probably my number 2 cornerback, and that is Nate Wiggins, cornerback out of Clemson. So I think that would be a really solid pick for the Cardinals, and they just continue and they need to add to that defense, the defensive side of the ball there in Arizona.
Yeah, that's a nice pick, especially for their scheme. He's more of a zone corner, but he's long and lanky, and I think he would fit really nicely with that Arizona Cardinals team. So we got pick 28. So Buffalo Bills. Let's see here. I'm gonna go wide receiver. I'm gonna give Josh Allen another target here. We really don't know what the future of Stephon Diggs is in Buffalo. It always seems like that dude's upset, especially, after a playoff loss. So maybe this is the off season that he actually gets moved. But I'm a big fan of this guy. I do think that he'll end up being a first round pick when it's all said and done. But Xavier Leggett, wide receiver from South Carolina.
Okay.
If you look at him, he just reminds me he is like a DK Metcalf clone. He's built the same height, same weight, probably the same speed. I think both of those guys, obviously DK was a 4.3 guy, and I think Xavier Leggett will be a 4.3 guy too. So just imagine DK Metcalf on the Bills. I think a lot of Bill fans would really like that pick.
Yeah, that'd be a really solid pick. And yeah, I think this is like the perfect range for him, this late first round, early second to mid second round. So we'll see what he
For
does
sure.
at the combine and see if he can even make his stock rise higher. So well, now we move on to the pick number 29. And just for some reason, Zach, I'm just noticing that I've been
You're
picking the
picking all
whole
that,
NFC
yeah.
North. So uh,
uh,
but
we'll
all
start
joking
pick a bunch of
aside though,
busts.
yeah, I'm doing my best job though of what I would
No, you
do to
are.
try
You
to
are.
improve those teams. So,
Yep.
Detroit, hats off to them, man. They deserve this season. They've been waiting for this season for a long time. They were a lot of fun to watch. That Dan Campbell, the new look Lions, like they say on the Pat McAfee show. And man, they have a lot of exciting things to look forward to because I don't see them going away anytime soon. So, just watching the Detroit, I feel like they have the weapons on offense. They have that really good offense line. They have the quarterback in Jared Goff. They have weapons at wide receiver. And, one thing that was missing this year was that defense. They're pretty opportunistic at times. I think they could use maybe um some little safety help. I don't know if what's his name? Who's the safety they got from Philly this year? Chance
Yes.
Gardner Johnson.
Yeah. Yep. Correct.
Is he gonna be
Correct.
back? I don't know if he's gonna be back next year.
Yeah. I honestly thought that he was just there on a 1 year deal. So
Yeah, so you know what? I think this would be a pretty exciting pick for Detroit Lions, and that is taking Tyler Nubin out of Minnesota.
let's go.
Just
Nice pick.
watching him in Minnesota, he's got incredible ball skills, he can come downfield, make tackles, and man, he would be a fun player to watch in Detroit. I'll be bummed that he's in the NFC North, but I'll be excited that I'll be able to watch him at least 2 times a year when he's playing the Vikings.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of his. Clear cut best safety in the draft. 6'2", 215 pounds. Good ball hawk. 9 interceptions the last 2 seasons. First team All American. And I saw a tweet either today or yesterday that when he was in coverage, he only allowed 30 yards all season. So that's what kind of guy he is
Yeah,
in
that's
coverage.
unreal.
Absolute superstar. Getting a guy like that at pick 29. In my opinion, watching watching the tape and watching his highlights, he should really be a top 15 pick.
Yeah, and he could maybe move up. And, I think playing at Minnesota kind of hinders that a little bit. But
Agreed.
I think whoever's going to get him, it's going to be like a Winfield Jr. situation
Yep.
where he's going to be a steal.
Yeah, he's definitely one of my favorite players in the draft. That was a great pick. Uh, on to pick number 30, the Baltimore Ravens. Man, they got a really nice roster. So I'm just kind of going best player available here, and that's Cooper DeJean, cornerback from Iowa. He's actually a white corner, so it'd
Yep.
be kind of cool seeing a white corner go in the first round. But he's probably the best tackling corner in the draft. He's not the fastest or athletic, but just an overall good playmaker. He had 7 interceptions the last 2 seasons. So I just feel like a guy like that, you plug him in, he's just a great football player, and I think he would fit well with that Baltimore defense.
Yeah, and I think Gopher fans remember him as the guy who did the blatant fair catch on that punt return touchdown that got taken back in the Iowa game this year.
Yes.
So I'm a little
Yes.
biased. He did definitely wave his arm there, but
Yep. Agreed.
I
He did.
think the refs made the right call on that. Well, moving on to the 31st pick, and that's the San Francisco 49ers on the clock. You know, man, just watching them, I know they're going to be in, some cap trouble this year. I think they're down in the low, maybe millions, if not even a little less than that, maybe 100,000s in cap right now. Obviously that can
Sure.
change big time based on maybe cuts, restructures, and, moving forward. But just watching them though, man, they don't have a lot of holes on that team, and they're they're an exciting team, and I'd feel a little better if I kind of had a better idea what they're going to be doing in free agency. But one of my
Sure.
favorite prospects has been kind of rising up in the draft process, and he had a really good Senior Bowl. And that's Darius Robinson, edge defender out of Missouri. So,
Nice.
so he's a solid pick. I think he's gonna be a guy that maybe kind of finds his way up into that late, early second round. And, just adding another guy on that D line that they can continue with that tenacious pass rush in San Fran would be a good move.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, geez, beefing up that defensive line even more is pretty scary. But
Yeah, for sure.
let's
And they could potentially lose Chase Young to this offseason.
Yeah, exactly. And I think they will. If I had to guess, I think Chase Young will be on a different team, so they could get him and just plug him into Chase Young's spot and just let it go. But moving on here to the Super Bowl champs, unfortunately, the Kansas City Chiefs. So now, obviously, when you got a team as good as you have, you kind of have, this is more of a luxury pick than anything else.
Yeah.
So I think the biggest need that they have is wide receiver. I was thinking of a guy like Keenan Coleman, wide receiver from FSU. He's a big body, 6'4", 230 pounds, really good red zone target. But the more I think about it, I do think they go wide receiver, but I think they're going to go Xavier Worthy, wide receiver from Texas.
Okay.
So, and the only reason why I pick him over Coleman is for the speed factor. Worthy is the fastest receiver, if not the fastest player in this entire draft.
Yeah.
He's going to be a 4-2 guy. Last year at Texas, he really showed out with Quinn Ewers at quarterback, went over 1,000 yards receiving. He's a great return guy, punt return, kick return. So, the Chiefs could use him that way too. But I really think that obviously since they've lost Tyreek Hill, they just need that deep ball guy.
Yeah, for
I think
sure.
Rice is a pretty solid receiver. Rice I think had 9 touchdowns last year. So let him work underneath a little bit and just have a guy like Xavier Worthy just plug him in and just kind of run the same routes that Tyreek did in Kansas City.
Yeah.
So you get a 4-2 guy, throw deep balls, do them, stretch that field out a little more. I think that'd be a really good pick for Kansas City.
Yeah, that'd be a solid pick, and they definitely need the more help at wide receiver. I think they have a nice guy moving forward with Rashee Rice, but just continuing to help Patrick Mahomes with more weapons would be helpful. I do think I like a guy, like so that kind of wraps up our first round mock here. Another guy I could see them maybe going after, and just maybe based on his offseason and how he does and at the combine, is Roman Wilson, that wide receiver out of Michigan, because he was just creating separation left and right at the Senior Bowl. I know he was like one of the guys that was the top 5 player. He left as one of the best players at the Senior Bowl this year. So I think Roman Wilson's kind of a guy to look out for that can maybe move up the board here and maybe sneak into the maybe late first round or something.
Yeah, I could see that too. Roman's another, deep ball threat that really stretched the field for Michigan when they did take their shots downfield.
Yeah, for sure.
I think he had double-digit touchdowns. I know that for sure at Michigan. So, but yeah, that's definitely what they need. They need a guy that can stretch the field. Obviously, in today's NFL, Xavier Worthy's only 6'1", 175 pounds. So he's really, he's really light. But I mean, look at a guy like Devontae Smith. It doesn't really matter. Devontae Smith dominates,
exactly.
and I don't even know if he weighs 180 pounds. So, yeah,
if you can create separation, man, with speed, that's the big difference maker. You have those guys that maybe 6'4", 6'3", 6'5", but they're slow movers and they can't create separation.
Yeah, yep, exactly. Yeah, no doubt about it. But I would be shocked if they didn't go receiver in that first round there. And there's going to be some nice talent for them picking at 32.
Yeah, for sure. And also, I think, we look at our draft, we have Michael Penix Jr. left here. I wonder if a team would maybe try to move up to that 32nd pick just to take him if he's still sliding to get that 5th-year option.
Yep, and I could totally see that too, because the Chiefs can move down, collect another day 2 pick, and all those receivers that we talked about will be there in the second round. They could just sit there and take one of those guys.
Yep.
Where, depending on how far they actually traded back in that second round. But I do think a team will trade up in that first round for a guy like Penix or even Bo Nix if he doesn't go as high as, the Saints.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Well, as a Raider fan, you guys took Newton at 13. Do you think you would be, if you were the GM, if you're Telesco for the Raiders, would you potentially try to move into that 32nd pick to take a guy like Penix?
Absolutely. I definitely would. Like I said, I would really like to get Penix in the first round just to get that 5th-year option. That 5th-year option is huge, especially if that quarterback plays as good as you're anticipating. So having him for 5 years instead of the 4, you can kind of stretch out that contract extension, which is really huge. Obviously the Vikings did that with Teddy Bridgewater. They traded back up and got him at 32, I think.
Yeah.
So it's definitely smart to do. I'm kind of really hoping that the Raiders are a little more aggressive in the draft and trade up into the top 3. But if they don't, and obviously we weren't doing trades in this mock draft, you just stay put at 13, take best player available, which I think they did at Newton at 13, and then, trade back up, like you said, and get your franchise guy. And I love Penix. So if they ended up leaving that first day, that first round of the NFL draft with a guy like Newton and Penix, I mean, man, would I be excited.
Yeah, that would be a very exciting draft for the Raiders for sure. So, all right, well, yeah, well, we made it to this point of the show. If you're still listening, thank you for listening and supporting our podcast. And if you like this draft talk, we'll have more mocks coming up. So just be on the lookout for those when they do drop.
Yeah, thanks again. If you guys listen to this point, we wanted to get this one out before the scouting combine hits, because obviously all the rankings and stuff will definitely be changing. It'll be changing fast. So it'll be fun to look back at this and see how off we were. So yeah, thanks you guys for listening, and we'll catch you at the next one. Go Raiders.
And Skull Vikes. Thank you for listening to our episode. Be sure to give us a follow on Instagram and X at Naptime Sports Talk Podcast for content related to the pod. Thank you for the support.